Okay. And the sound is off. All right. So, welcome everyone. I don't want to block you. To this launch of Vision 2 with Nathan Rathort and Paul Swallow. My name is Greg Newton. Yes, give it up, give it up. And welcome to our online viewers. My name is Greg Newton. I am the co-founder of the Bureau of General Services Queer Division. We're being helped out today by George Edwards. The Bureau is an all-volunteer organization, as you probably know. And we have a suggested donation of $10, so I'm going to pass the bag around, but we always say give what you can, if you can. There's some change in here. And if you'd prefer to support us by purchasing books or zines, that's a perfectly legitimate way to support us. And those of you online can Venmo us if you like at BGSQD. If you're not already on our email list and you would like to be, you can sign up for that on our website, bgsqd.com, or at the back of the room. And I'm just going to read a land acknowledgement and a call for a ceasefire, and we'll get started. I'm just going to address all the political wrongs in the world, and then we'll have a nice talk about art. So the Bureau acknowledges that our organization operates on the unceded land of the Munsee Lenape. We encourage you to join the Bureau in signing up to make a monthly donation to the American Indian Community Houses Mannahatta Fund. The Mannahatta Fund, according to its website, is an invitation to all settlers and non-Native people who wish to acknowledge the legacy of theft and genocide that comprise the history of New York City and the United States. And you can find out more at mannahattafund.org. We also want to recognize that today is the 128th day of Israel's genocidal campaign against the Palestinian people, funded by our tax dollars and enabled by our government's unwavering support. We hope that you will join us in calling for an immediate permanent ceasefire, an end to the siege, and an end to the occupation in order to stop the collective punishment of Palestinians and to ensure the swift delivery of much needed food, water, medicine, fuel, and medical aid to the people of Gaza. And now, Nathan Rathort is a California-raised multimedia artist and gallery owner. Guided by formative years in San Francisco, his art celebrates the connectivity between the present experience and queer ancestral history. Nathan is the founder of Dream Brother Gallery, a queer art platform dedicated to nurturing and generating funds for working queer artists. Paul Swallow is a performance artist best known for his alter egos Christine, a sexually infused sewer of live rap and vile shamelessness. Oh, welcome. Yay. And cabaret crooning Rebecca Havemeyer, an ageless bastard heiress of the boozy bygone Hollywood years. Please give them a very warm welcome.
Thanks for being here on Super Bowl Sunday. It's wonderful. Exactly. It's good to see the team together here in this room, in this very important room here. Hi, Nathan. Nathan and I have known each other for years and years, and I'm real happy to be here with you to celebrate the launch of this part 2 of your book.
Thank you.
With a part 3 on the way.
Yeah.
And I'm really happy to see all you people here denying yourselves a Super Bowl to be here with us. Most of us probably can't throw or catch a ball. Celebrate that. Nick.
Yeah, thank you for being here. I chose Paul as my cohort today because strangely, we've just had random throughout my journey as an artist and getting to where I am today, Paul has just been kind of a touchstone at certain really pivotal moments in that, as well as one of the artists in Vision 1. So Paul felt like a really solid choice as a person to talk with me today. So thanks for coming.
Yeah. And I think that that's, touchstones and the ways upon which you came to have this book published and more, so, more on the way after this one. That's something we wanted to kind of share with y'all about how we kind of met and how different circumstances within Nathan's life dictated the content that he's putting in these books today. And San Francisco is kind of the old bowl that we got mixed up in years ago. And I don't know, do you want to tell them a little bit about how your life was in San Francisco? This was back in, goodness, 2010 is when
I moved to San Francisco in 2006.
Okay.
I was in Detroit previously, where I went to school for painting. I was a trained painter, and I DJ'd in Detroit. Gathering queer community was a part of my fabric of me even back then, before I was a professional visual artist. So I was I was DJing and throwing these parties in Detroit that were queer dance parties, and there weren't really underground queer dance parties at the time. And my friend Mike Servito and I, who was a really established DJ in the Detroit techno scene, decided to start throwing these underground queer parties, and they were an instant kind of wild success in Detroit. So event promoting and gathering of queer people in spaces has always been a big part of what I do. I moved to San Francisco in 2006, in my early 20s. At the time I needed to stretch my queer legs. I needed to get out of Detroit. I was back into San Francisco. It was actually meant to be a temporary thing. I had come to New York and was planning to move here full time, and circumstances it was a really difficult process to get here. Finding an apartment was a huge challenge. And I just kind of took a break from that and stepped away and went for a visit to San Francisco. And she just really pulled me in. And I went there thinking I was going to stay for maybe 3 or 6 months. And I was there for over a decade. And those were the formative years of my queer adult life, no doubt. I fell into Tranny Shack right away. Within my first 2 weeks of being in San Francisco, I met a boy at a queer punk party, and he brought me to Tranny Shack at the Stud. And the Stud was a real home for decades-long home for a lot of queer community events. It was terrible people. And Tranny Shack at the time was, I think it was America's longest running weekly drag show at the time. It was going on like 16 years when I started going, run by Heklina, who we just lost this last year, unfortunately. So I went to Tranny Shack for my first time, and in all of the years of Tranny Shack, they always had themes for the nights. It was a Tuesday night at the Stud at midnight, which was an interesting time because I feel like people that were there for a reason. It wasn't a Saturday night, like I'm blowing off steam after work event. It was a Tuesday night commitment at midnight. And if you were there because you knew that you had to be there. And it really was a very insanely, specifically magical place. But in all of their years, they only did 3 full album nights where they took an entire album in its entirety and presented it start to finish. And I happened to go for my first time on Fleetwood Mac Rumors night. And it was just a formative experience, like seeing what I was seeing this community on stage of people who clearly loved each other and were just whip smart and were creating these stories. It was unlike any drag I had ever seen in Detroit up until that point. And I knew immediately that was where I wanted to invest my time, and I was going to meet friends in that scene, and I did very quickly. So yeah, I became a Tranny Shack boy. I was there every week. I had never done drag at the time, but I quickly saw it as an opportunity as a visual artist and a storyteller to collaborate with some of these people, even though I didn't have an inclination to perform myself. I started getting involved in creating props and sets and directing numbers and doing backup and all these different tasks, that come with that. And that led to me ending up being a performer myself. So I ended up being a drag queen doing drag for about 8 or 9 years, steadily. But yeah, there was an event. I officially met you because you were booked at Club Something, which once Tranny Shack left the Stud after, I think they were on year 17 at that point, or 18, Heklina decided to kill the night And originally it was just to kill the night, and eventually a year later, there was such demand to bring it back that she brought it back to a different location, a much larger stage. And it was a monthly party. But Tuesdays at the Stud were done. And Club Something, which was founded by Vivian Forevermore, David Lammermore, and Kevin Downey, started this club on Mondays, originally called Tiara Sensation, that then ended up moving to Friday nights at the Stud. So they kind of picked up as like the weekly queer underground kind of edgier drag show at the Stud once Tranny Shack left. So you were booked at Club Something. I think that's how I first briefly met you. But there was this event that they would do every Easter weekend. It was a bus trip to Reno, the Tranny Shack Reno bus trip. And it's a shit show. It was you get on the bus at 10 a.m. on the Saturday before Easter. And it was this opportunity as well to like, you turned out like your best drag of the year. Like it was photo ops and well, I mean, something
No,
really
it
went for
was
it. It was like really, yeah. I mean, it was 2 charter buses, each housing like 70 people, I think. It was like a good like
However much a bus haul was.
Yeah, it was a lot of
bus
people. Hosted by Heklina, hosted by Peaches Christ. So you get on this bus, and the tradition was that you stop at a McDonald's in Auburn, California. Same McDonald's every year. And it had happened so many years, they were on again in year like 15 of this bus trip, that the McDonald's knew we were coming. So like the staff knew we were coming and were like excited and ready for us. So you stop in Auburn halfway through the trip and you unload these 2 buses of coked out, drunk, crazy on drugs drag queens in their best drag, and it was a shit show at McDonald's. Like, I mean, queens are behind the counter making fries, there's dance offs.
It's truly a takeover. Like, I think the manager was the same, but the turnover of the workers, they had no clue, but they would welcome the 2 buses would arrive, and it was madness, like literally taking over an entire McDonald's and their yard, the grassy hill out front.
And the liquor store across the street.
Liquor store across the street. It was the only stop the bus made on the way to Reno, so a lot of community building. This brief hour, maybe we stayed at McDonald's.
Yeah, it was like an hour. So
Yeah.
you were hired to host one of the buses.
Yeah, there would be 2 hosts on each bus. And I had just started kind of introducing my work to San Francisco. And I was a host with Holy McGrail on a bus.
So I remember meeting you on that bus and having a really like long conversation. I think it was maybe it was on the way back. I don't remember exactly when we talked, but you were involved in a group of people in Austin that had just started or were about to start an alternative to Pride festival or celebration called Queer Bomb. And that was, I think it was the first year, because you were kind of pitching it to myself and Vivian, who started Club Something. So we had this long talk about it, and Viv and I decided we'd never been to Austin and we were gonna go support that. So April was the bus trip. When was Queer Bomb again? June? No,
June. I think, June.
Yeah, so we booked a trip to go to Austin, the 2 of us, Micah, Vivian and I, and per Paul's invitation. And we went and had this amazing time, and it was a really incredible turning out of people in Texas from all over the region. I think people were coming from other states as well, but it was really a beautiful thing. Parades through the streets, huge dance parties. It was really a profound experience. And I fell very quickly in love with the Austin scene and with what Paul was doing and Christine was doing in Austin. So we started coming every year. That first year led to, I think I went to every Queer Bomb until I moved to Austin, which eventually led to you booking. You did a Tranny Shack Austin. Because Viv and I were the first ones to first go, and then we kind of started wrangling other gals to come with us. Like every year, the crew kept getting bigger and bigger, until we reached a point where Heklina came and we did a proper Tranny Shack. I remember my number was the Beastie Boys Girls that night, and the whole point was that we were all supposed to be really pretty, and I had asked you to do backup for me, and you were gonna do Rebecca. And I showed up at the club and Christine was standing there. And you said, "I'm sorry, and it's Christine." And I was like, it's fine. So
Get what you get.
It was a great night. I had Heklina and Christine doing backup for me, which both of you I don't think are Keenan.
We're never in the back.
Yeah, exactly. Like, I had this amazing shot of these two like epic queens behind me doing backup parts. It was very sweet. But yeah, I ended up moving to Austin. I had reached a point in San Francisco where it had really, the changes were really potent. The tech boom had happened. This was like 2012 where it started to get really profound there, and a lot of people were starting to leave. A lot of people went down to LA, a lot of people went to New York. I went to Texas. I thought it was a great idea. I had fallen very much in like with Austin. I had community there. I had this idea that I wanted to like buy a house and settle down a little bit. So I moved to Texas. It wasn't long-term the best fit for me, but it was a really important chapter for me in that I was able to quit my day jobs. I got 2 jobs as a professional artist. It was sort of my coming into my own as a professional artist and not relying on a day job anymore. So I worked at a theater in Austin doing props, and I taught painting classes. And the biggest thing that happened in Austin was that I post a breakup with my boyfriend there, released a coloring book. It was Last Night I Dreamt That Somebody Loved Me. And I made this thing with a friend. It was really just like me getting some feelings out on paper, kind of processing the slutty phase that follows a breakup and the heartbreak that you seek to quench with casual hookups. And I was just kind of going through some stuff, and I got it on paper and made this coloring book thinking 10 people would buy it, 2 people would buy it. So I made 20 copies of this book to start. And it immediately went really viral. I had this crazy experience where Huffington Post caught wind of it, and they featured it on Queer Voices on a Saturday as like the splash article. And within 2 days, I had sold like thousands of this book. And I took it as an opportunity to, these windows as an artist don't always happen. You don't have these hits. And I took this moment as an opportunity to really get myself out of Austin. I knew that I wasn't loving it there. And I wanted to get out into the world again. So I went on a book tour for the coloring book, totally self-funded. I just took the money I made on the books and went on a book tour, and was like, I'm just gonna get out there and meet people and reconnect and see what's out there. So yeah, I went on this book tour, and I kind of also took it as an opportunity to expand upon this. And I created a line of t-shirts and pins and patches and accessible art. I really wanted to create art that people could invest in without it being a $3,000 painting. So with this line of things in this successful book, I went on the road, and part of my trip was Los Angeles. And I decided that was gonna be the next place that I took myself. And I had grown up in Los Angeles, so I hadn't been there in 20 something years, and it was a very different place, and I was a very different person. So yeah, LA was the next chapter.
Which then led you to open a store.
Yes, I arrived in LA, was vending really heavily with everything I had put out, was really engaging with the LA queer art scene, was kind of in the trenches at a lot of these events, set up next to a lot of my fellow artists. My best friend in LA, Susie May, had an online store of queer metaphysical supplies that she was kind of on her own time was pushing and trying to create a following for. And I was doing my own web store, and we both kind of, in all of this vending and in all of this community engagement with other people that had amazing stuff they were putting out at the time, we both had a desire to open up a physical space, because physical spaces are really important for this stuff. Online is great, but you can bring people's work together under one roof and create an experience for people in a brick and mortar setting that's really powerful. But
Like here.
yeah, these spaces are very few and far between, and hard to make happen. And neither of us were trust fund kids. Neither of us came from me. But Susie's girlfriend had just opened up a lesbian bar in downtown Los Angeles, and there was this strange little back space behind the lesbian bar that was kind of offered to us rent free to workshop this space. So we did that. We took the opportunity. We opened up a storefront. We did end up moving out of that space into our own location that was our own space without the bar attachment in Atwater Village. And it was amazing. Events were a huge part of our DNA there. We were doing like 3 or 4 events a week. Before COVID shuttered us, I had about 125, 130 artists represented in the shop between book zines, t-shirts, wearables, pins, patches, things, doodads. I was really having a blast curating, which was easy because I had all these relationships with all these artists already. So there was this trusting dynamic. I wasn't just some random person whose dad bought them a white wall gallery and wanted them to come into the space. I had this connective tissue with so many people. So, and I would do a monthly curated solo exhibition in the gallery space. So we were really, it was amazing. And then COVID happened. So, you know, I knew right away our circumstances were not going to lead us to being able to maintain the space. We didn't have a cushion to fall back on. It was already a struggle. And events were so much a part of what we were doing, were so fundamental to the space that it just felt really irresponsible to try to be forcing events at that. I mean, there wasn't. It was done. It was done. It was, you know, I knew right away. So yeah, it was a pretty quick decision, unfortunately, to shutter the space, but that's what we had to do.
So, but I mean, naturally, your experiences led you to creating a store that was curating all of these people that you had come to know over the years, especially the San Francisco community was really tight, and a lot of them, I mean, when I started going there to club something, yeah, I'd never seen people like this in my life. I'd never been to San Francisco. So there was a really vibrant creative community of these queens who were doing shit like performances, as any of y'all who've been to San Francisco and seen the drag scene there. It's a really remarkable experience and a beast of its own. So it's nice to see that you kind of like throughout your lifestyle kind of continued to build your relationships with these people. You had this store, COVID comes in, screws all of our lives up, shuts us all down. And you naturally, you know, gravitated towards the book. And I think the book is a reflection of many things that were going on during COVID. You had approached me, and I'll let you speak about the other artists in the book. Initially, Nathan had approached me in the work that I do as Christine, which I do paintings and drawing. Christine just do whatever the hell that thing tells me to do. And Nathan approached and said, look, I'm putting a book together. I'd like to kind of create a place that could hopefully generate funds for artists who are, you know, dealing with COVID right now. So let's put a collection of people's art into this book, and hopefully see one exposure to y'all's work through this catalog that he's curated, and, you know, in a hopeful situation where, you know, we might get some dough out of it too. I mean, what it really became is a really fantastic catalog of some really interesting people that Nathan's come to know in his life. And I think it really took you to a place that you are going back into stores in the Hudson Valley where you are now, and you've brought that kind of that environment back into your life. But this book, plus the second one that's come out now, maybe talk a little bit about like what these artists that you chose, why did you choose these artists, and like, you know, how you came about to see us all being thrown into this Dream Brother book.
Yeah.
And where that name and book came from.
Yeah. Dream Brother was my response to losing my space. It was, I had a moment of like, do you give up? And I mean, this is devastating. Or how do you maintain those relationships? How do you honor those commitments that you have with artists who you have on the books for 2020 that you aren't able to do shows with now? How do you continue to curate, showcase, generate funds for artists without the physical space? Everything was going online. Everything was digital. And my first kind of thoughts around it were to do strictly online. But then I just had a moment where I was like, I've done self-publishing. Like I've had a good, successful, I'm familiar with it. I'm established in it. Books, like this feels like a time for tactile, and this feels like an opportunity to give people that experience of maybe being in a gallery and looking at something in person without the four walls. And you know, these books are completely self-published. They are self-funded by me. You know, I choose artists that I know are good at spreading the word. Community was really important during COVID too, coming together for mutual goals. So I looked at it as a challenge to buyers and supporters to invest directly in something and support artists directly, but I also looked at it as a challenge to my artists as well. Like, let's work on something together. Like, if we sell out of these books, I can pay you from these books. So let's all work towards this common goal. And it was a way to, during this really bleak time, bring these 8 people together for something that was joyful and that was tactile and that was celebratory. And that hopefully led to, you know, a little bit of cash in all of our pockets, maybe.
Did you think you'd do more than one book when you came out with this first one?
Absolutely, yeah. The goal was, so yeah, Vision 1 came out in winter of 21. So yeah, the artists are.
They'll have like, yeah, do you want to talk about
Yeah.
the different artists in it, who you chose?
Yeah. So Vision 1, the artists were David Simon Dion, who was one of the artists that I had on the books for 2020 for a solo show in the gallery. He did this series of photographs called Ballerino, where it was all male ballet dancers. And they were just these really stunning photographs. He was supposed to be, I think he was the next show lined up at the gallery. So that was sort of a no-brainer. Like, if you had a show on the books, we're going to be putting you in the book. That was just, if you want, we're gonna honor that. So yeah, David Simon Dion did this beautiful series of photographs. Kim Thompson was an artist that I discovered actually through Instagram. Her work, she lives in the UK, does these really beautiful digital and hand painted, really like poppy, sort of surrealist 60s throwback pieces that are just really incredible. And she was a really lovely person to work with. Zachary Drucker. Zachary, I don't know if any of you are familiar with Zachary Drucker, but Zachary Drucker is mainly known for writing and for contributions. Trans woman, she worked as a consultant on Transparent. She directed The Lady of the Dale, which is a documentary on HBO that came out. She's done a bunch of film work since. But Zachary was somebody who was more known for her contributions to writing and media production. So when I reached out to Zachary, I didn't know what I was going to get. I just knew that she also did visual work. And what I got were these stunning self-portraits of her transition process. I didn't know Zachary really well, and I was really struck with the precious cargo that I was given with this series. Like, she entrusted me with these like really personal, tender pieces. So yeah, Zachary Drucker's portraits are in here. Zach Greer, who is a New York-based artist. A lot of you probably know who Zach is. Zach and I go way back to San Francisco days. We were Gabies together there. Zach was very present in the Love Bazaar story. Zach was one of the artists in the initial group show. Zach did a solo show while we were still open. So Zach was somebody that I had a long-standing relationship with, and I just knew I wanted involved in the book just because it just did such strong work, and I wanted it. Michael James Schneider, an old friend, another person that we had a gallery show on the books for. Michael is known mainly, you probably know his work online. He does balloon installations. They're these word balloons that spell out phrases and quotes. He's got this like massive following for that. We were going to do a balloon installation in the courtyard of the gallery, and it wasn't able to happen. So Michael actually ended up submitting these pieces that are photographs of neon installations that he does, and they are actual tactile neon installations. It's not Photoshop, it's not AI generated, it's literal. He goes in and installs these neons into these natural habitats. They're really amazing. Laura Lee Benjamin, Queens-based Black lesbian artist, does really amazing hypersexual, kind of a lesbian bookend to sort of the work that I was doing. Like, I use hypercolors in a lot of my figure work. I tend not to use traditional flesh tones. I really like a hyper romantic, hyper surrealistic color palette, and she was kind of doing that with this as well. And again, very like hypersexual work, which I really wanted to have some of in the book. Christine. And again, Paul was just somebody that I've known forever. I also really enjoyed the process of choosing artists who are maybe not known as well for their visual art, or that isn't really their focus, and pulling them into this project. So that was my thing with Christine was, you know, you do this and it's not really your main jam and what people really know you for, but it's beautiful, and I would love to include it in this project that I can't, you know, I can't get Christine to perform in a book, but I can get Christine. So yeah, Christine, and then Alexander Agee, LA-based artist who went on a road trip during COVID and took photographs of the night sky across his entire back and forth from West Coast to East Coast and back trip, and created these collages of night skies, and then meticulously land named every shot, land acknowledged every shot that he took in the book. So that was the last exhibition in book one. And then I, as a curator in each book, I submit one piece as a curator contribution. And then I have a foreword for each book. And the first book was Leo Herrera. If you're familiar with Herrera Images, has gotten, again, I knew Leo for years in San Francisco as a visual artist and performance artist, but has really come into his own as a literary force now. Like,
Kind of like
yeah.
Leo's like archivist
Yeah.
of our culture, and the Fathers Project, which Leo kind of like imagined. I guess Leo created imagery of many of our elders who died of AIDS and are related in issues, and generated images of them as though if they were still alive, what they would look like, collecting all these stories on them. And Leo's just really deep in archiving the elders that we've lost, and also just the backest of back rooms that Leo frequents, and brings stories back and knowledge. Like right now, Leo's doing a whole informative session of cruising and Leo's experiences with cruising, and teaching people in our community how to navigate a bathhouse. The tricks and the trade of it, and the, not the rules necessarily, but in a very caring, compassionate way. Leo's like, look, if you decide to do these things that maybe you're too afraid to do, these are some pointers on how to navigate a bathhouse. And he's very compassionate and thoughtful in how he educates people. So a good choice to you know, grease up the front of the
Leo
book.
created a very beautiful foreword for the first book. So I was really pleased to have him. And yeah, the Fathers Project, I just want to talk about that for a second. Really interesting project. You can check it out on, I think it's iftheylived.org is the website. But yeah, it's a film basically. It is the imagery created with AI of the elders if they were alive today. But it's also cut with, it's sort of a sci-fi documentary style short film, where he collected footage from things like Burning Man, from Carnival, from Mardi Gras, all these queer Provincetown, Folsom, all these different queer current gathering events, and presented them in a way. The concept was, what if AIDS never happened? Where would we be? So in this utopian world where AIDS never happened, he's telling this story about how, you know, politics are completely different now because we didn't lose all these people, and they got involved in politics, and there are these gay colonies that exist that are sort of the pinnacle of like human existence. Like there's like utopian colonies that now exist, and yeah, it's a really fascinating project. But it's a film where he was able to utilize actual original footage of these current things and sort of place them in a completely different context in a near future setting. So it's really fascinating. Check it out.
And Leo was also part of that San Francisco community when we were all meeting each other.
Yeah.
Was also in there.
Absolutely.
A piece of that, you know, that structure that we've all been dispersed into our different cities, and still, you know, still holding on to each other with these projects.
Yeah.
And that's kind of the beauty of it.
Absolutely.
As well.
Yeah, so Vision One came out, and the second it got launched, some stuff happened in my life that was pretty potent. I lost my grandmother. I had a cat come down with cancer. Somebody set fire to my car. I decided to move to New York. A lot of things just kind of happened very quickly, right after the launch of this. So this was meant to be a quarterly, maybe every 6 months, it ended up being almost 2 years before I finally got around to Vision Two, not for lack of me wanting to, it was just a, financial thing, it was a energetic thing, it just was a
Life.
long process, yeah. So Vision Two just came out,
Which
last
is what
month.
we're celebrating here today is the Vision Two.
Vision Two. Similar in format, it's 8 queer artists curated together, in solo exhibition style. I didn't touch on too, it was important to me layout wise. I really wanted to try to replicate a gallery walkthrough experience as closely as possible. So, the book is laid out in a way where it's single images on one side. There's no competing imagery, there's no competing text. It's not hyper designed. I'm not all over it. I really wanted to create this very pure tactile gallery walkthrough experience in your hands. So similar, and they're very much the same container, just 8 new artists. So Vision Two, I'm really stoked. I got Michelle T to write the foreword for Vision Two, another old friend, somebody that I knew I wanted a female voice as the foreword for the second book. And Michelle was super on board and wrote this really beautiful foreword, speaking to her experience taking in a Robert Mapplethorpe exhibit as a child, and what that did to her and meant to her as a queer creative person. So that's, yeah, Michelle T did the forward, really stoked about that.
How young were they when they saw Mapplethorpe as a child? Does it say?
I mean,
That's a lot.
preteen.
I wish I'd have seen Mapplethorpe as a child.
Yeah, preteen, young,
That's great.
probably too young, but whatever.
Too young.
So yeah, Vision Two, 8 new artists. Anna Benaroya is the first artist. Does these really incredible, colorful, kind of crude women smoking paintings that are sort of R. Crumb-esque hypercolor again, like really fantastical color palette. And I approached her and was a really big fan of her work, and she was kind enough to jump in. I've never met Anna. Some of these artists too, the interesting thing is like people like Laura Lee Benjamin, people like James Falciano, Kyle Anderson from Doable Guys. These are people that I have like these really long friendships with, like 10+ years, that I've actually never met in person, which is wild. Like, so I did the Doable Guys, the Bliss show recently at Come On Everybody. And I met like 3 people that I was like we're close friends, but like we've never hugged each other. This is wild. So like that's been really cool to like connect some of those dots being out east now. So yeah, haven't met Anna unfortunately, but soon I hope. Zach Brunner, who does these really beautiful digital pieces of wrestlers and tender moments, like domestic tender moments between boyfriend lovers. Grimes. Theodore Grimes is a Black trans artist based in Queens, I think. Yeah, Queens. Sorry, Bronx. Grimes does these really beautiful digital paintings of trans joy and trans people, mainly in their homes. A lot of domestic scenes. They are very sex positive, but there's a tenderness to them and a normalcy to them that I think is really special. And yeah, Grimes is just kind of blowing up right now. Really amazing work. Like Gildafish, another New York-based artist, but does these really stunning, mainly paint, but some of them are colored pencil, portraits of his imaginary friend from childhood. So he had this, like his first boyfriend was this imaginary friend named Piraruku. And it's a series of portraits of this person that was his comrade as a young child that didn't exist, that he now honors through these paintings of Piraruku. It's really beautiful, this Piraruku.
The lucky kid.
Yeah, right. Sedgwick Guth, based out of Massachusetts. Harrisburg, Pennsylvania. Does these large scale paintings rooted in vintage pornography, but does a lot of like so much hand treatment to them. There's a lot of embellishment that goes on with thread, with beading, applique. So yeah, that was a really exciting person to work with as well. Somebody I've been a big fan of for a while, but had never engaged with in person. We have since met each other and worked on this together, and actually had a lot of connective tissue through other projects, strangely. But yeah, this is Cedric Guth, Mazahir Hussain, who goes by Girth of Venus. Some of you may know his work. Another UK-based artist that does these really stunningly detailed, hyper fantastical, romantic encounters between mainly POC men, but it kind of varies. But yeah, just these really gorgeous, hyper detailed pieces. So I was really excited to work with him. Again, somebody I hadn't met, but was a really big fan of online. Vision 2 gave me a little more opportunity. Vision 1, there were a lot of people that I knew off the bat that I was going to work with. Like there were people that I had obligations with that I wanted to show their work already through the gallery. Vision 2 was much more like, okay, now I get to like play a little bit, like find people and reach out to people that I don't know that well. So yeah, Girth of Venus is one of those people. Juanita Moore, an old San Francisco legendary queen and community organizer and fundraiser and performer and
Terrible performer to the stud who would just ruin us.
chef.
Wani came out with a big joint, would do a Erykah Badu number.
Yeah.
And
no, she had like 20 joints in her.
but
wig.
she would roll this massive blunt that was like this long, and she would hand it out to the audience at the beginning of the song, and we'd all pass it around.
But then she would proceed to pull small
More
joints
out of her
and
hair.
just keep
She was in a big naked bodysuit.
By the end of it, you were literally like getting a joint from each side. Like,
It was amazing, and you were just like, and then Glamour would come out after her and ruin us because we didn't know what to do because we were out of our mind. Yeah, Juanita Moore is special.
special one for sure. And Juanita Moore,
Again,
again,
extremely active in the community now. Just like I get newsletters from Wani every.
hyper like fundraising,
Yeah.
always does a pride event, like
Yeah.
a lot, very charity focused.
Yeah.
But again, Wani is somebody who is known as this drag performer and community person. But what I loved about, there was a series of events that she used to do in San Francisco called Booty Call Wednesdays.
Mhm.
And it was a weekly party in the Castro. It was just, it was a cute boy party, whatever. But she shot all the photography for all the flyer imagery. And it was sort of this interesting, Juanita was the DJ, was the host, was the creator of the imagery for the event, would hire out and curate somebody to do a backdrop every week. So it was this really fully fleshed out Juanita experience. So we chose to do the Booty Call Wednesday shots for this because I loved that it was her doing it. And she does do a lot of visual art. She commissions a lot. So every year for her Pride party, she commissions different artists to do a portrait of her for it. Christmas card every year, she commissions a different artist to do a portrait of her for, but she doesn't create her own generative art very often. But this was a project that she did create that herself for. So I specifically wanted to do that series. So it's, it's a lot of photos of, it's one of her, but it's a lot of photos of, boys in the scene, because it was definitely like a shirtless, cute dance party in the Castro, but it was a lot of, the people at the time. This is very much a time capsule again of San Francisco at the time. Not all, Veronica Klaus. Yeah, anyway, so Juanita Moore photographs, and then Pansy S Ceramics is the final artist as well in this book. And again, I carry Pansy S Ceramics in the gallery. How do you, without the gallery, like online is one thing, but it's nice to take these physical objects in photograph form and present them in this format as well. So Pansy S Ceramics was kind enough to lend me some really beautiful photographs of their really exquisite. If you're not familiar, get familiar. It's really insane.
Good gift
And
for
made
people you love or
ceramics.
hate.
Yeah. And then my curator contribution again, which is a portrait of Patrick, who is so part of Dream Brother as well is that when I first started the platform, in addition to doing online content in the form of a rotating monthly or bi-monthly gallery show on the website and the books, and potentially once COVID lightened up, IRL events again, I also saw for the future of Dream Brother a residency program. My plan to move upstate was to, once I had some room to breathe, I could potentially create space for an artist in residence. So the workshopping of that came in. Patrick came out to LA to shelter with me and had been working on this staged piece of many years that there's a lot of things to generate for. And it was this opportunity to kind of workshop the idea of an artist in residence, like come shelter in LA, work on your work, we'll make you the artist in residence, and we kind of see how that goes. So Patrick has remained the artist in residence only because I don't have the room right now to house somebody at the moment, but the goal long-term is to have that space to do that. So, and then I brought Leo Herrera back in again, because I was adamant about doing a Heclina dedication page, and Leo had taken this really amazing photograph of her back in the day and had written of all of the tributes that came out when Heclina passed this year. Leo's was just like the one that just nailed it. So he was kind enough to give me both of those to create a dedication page for Heckles. So yeah, and then I always do a list of resources in the back as well, just different organizations you can support. Yeah, so that's vision 2.
Yeah, I mean, I think they're a really beautiful testament of like what we've kind of gone over in the community, and like strong sexual nature of our community and the celebration of that, and really kind of capturing all corners of the community and putting them into these collections that are really, you know, stunning and showcasing a lot of your life and a lot of our lives. You are currently in upstate New York.
Yep.
Back with a store. And now, you know, that's taking you, do you see yourself maintaining store and continuing with book, or?
Yeah, as long as I can. I moved up to upstate last August to Hudson, and I met somebody up there.
Where's the store?
So it's in
In case y'all go to Hudson, you can go visit.
It's in Hudson proper, right off of Warren Street. We're gonna be moving in the next couple of months back to our old location at 1 Warren, which is right by the train on Warren Street. But I met Jonathan Osofsky, who is the creative director for a store called Kasuri in Hudson, and they are, at their core, they're a high-end fashion boutique, but kind of curated through this like 50-year-old faggot lens. That's really like, you know, an alternative kid in the 90s. So it's like Come to Us on Runway, it's Walter von Behrendonck, but it's really focused on like these really insane wearable pieces of art, and it's a really stunning boutique. And Jonathan and I met, and we connected over sort of frustrations around in Hudson there being such a large gay population, but not a lot of gay gathering spaces. There isn't even a gay bar in Hudson, which is wild. And yeah, so they had moved into this really big factory space, and they had a whole second floor that was kind of not being utilized. And as we got to know each other, Jonathan discovered that like event promotion and gathering spaces for queers and throwing things and creating space was a big part of what I do and what I wanted to keep doing. And so we started working together on utilizing that space. So we started doing a bi-monthly movie series called Queer Us Film Club. We started doing bi-monthly figure drawing events, and then just kind of peppered in parties and events in between, really trying to create space outside of a bar scene for queers together in Hudson around something where you can like commune and have dialogue afterwards, and we can bring people in that worked on the films, and we can just have these really special events. So we've been doing that since May. And then there was this weird little, not little, hefty sized storage closet in the main boutique that they weren't using for anything. And it was literally just a storage closet. Jonathan was like, what if we like let you build out a little shop again? I was like, yeah, please. Like, that's really what I want to do again. So, you know, I've become really comfortable with doing my thing and curating in this format, but I do love to have a physical space. It's really, it scratches an itch for me. There is something powerful about, I mean, much like this space, having a physical space to bring these pieces of work together under one roof and let them speak with each other and let them dialogue with each other and let people browse and see these things in person. So, we built it, we took this closet and I converted it into a little naughty back room bookstore. We called it the Back Room. And it feels like a little like a back room in a video store in the 90s. We really tricked it out to look like that, and feel like that. We initially built it out with a lot of stock that I had left over from the original gallery space. I had a lot of wholesale that I was just kind of holding on to and was like, I have no idea what I'm gonna do with this stuff. It's not my work, it's other people's work. I can table vend it, I guess, at some point, but like, oh, I have all this amazing stock. Let's get it onto shelves again. So we built it out initially from that, but we've continued to build out because, you know, post-COVID, there's been so much amazing stuff that's come out. I mean, there so many people are putting out really awesome publications right now. They were doing so before COVID, but there are a lot of new things as well. So it's been fun to get back into that role and start curating again and start engaging with people again. David is here. We carry his book, Getting In, which is a really incredible hardcover that's right over there. That's a collection of party flyers from New York in the 90s. Yeah, so it's been lovely to get back into that role again and start engaging with people again in a beyond just the 8 artists that I'm working with at a time, on a broader scale, starting to work with people again. Dispatcher is here, who's gonna be my next online solo exhibition, which I'm really excited about. So yeah, that's the future, is I now have a brick and mortar again that I hope to maintain and hope to maybe do another one somewhere. I don't know. I mean, we'll see what the future holds. Brick and mortars are tough.
I had to ask him what he meant by brick and mortar. I thought it was a bar I had never heard of. Something. It's just starting a store or a place. It's a place. It's brick and mortar. I was like, I haven't heard of this bar. What's brick and mortar? I was like, really? Like, I don't understand.
You were like
part of your
first gallery? I was like,
yeah, it's like, is this your new gallery, brick and mortar? Louisiana.
that's a good thing you're pretty.
Yeah, all right.
Yeah, so you know, the future is a vision 3. The future is maintaining a physical space if possible. I'm lucky right now in that I have somebody that I'm working with that can facilitate that for me and with me. I have the support of a larger entity to make that happen. I'm certainly not in a position where I can open up my own space at this moment, but you know.
But that has been the model, and I think
Yeah.
that's something that speaks for itself. Like you've been able to join, piggyback, or find, integrate yourself into these different people's brick and mortar establishments, and that's community building. And every time I've seen you in a space that you've been operating, that also generates the catalog you've created here, like those, everything's working towards everything else. I think it's a pretty good sign that you are in a back room at a place in Hudson once again, and using those experiences to continue what you're doing here with the book. So I'd say it's a good sign.
Thanks. Yeah,
Don't fix what ain't broke.
no, it's everything leads to something, and even those things that feel really devastating lead to something. Losing the original gallery felt like a huge devastating blow, but it led me to where I am now. Creating a book out of a heartbreak. It led to all. I mean, it all really.
We all know the worst stuff brings out the best.
Yeah, totally.
Most sometimes if we survive, maybe. But no, it's a good example of that.
Thank you.
Yeah.
That's where we are now. So yeah, your best way of supporting is purchasing a book. Your funds do, once the editions sell out, they do go towards the artist directly. It's a labor of love, but we're making it work.
Yeah.
I feel like making one comment, if that's okay.
Yeah.
It's just insider knowledge that both publications, each time they went to print, were initially refused by the print shops. A print shop on each coast refused to print this queer faggot book. And I just think it's important to acknowledge that, because we can sometimes forget that like the tactile is still radical, and it's packaged nicely and it's beautiful, but it still fucks people up in the brain, and that's amazing. And it also makes it feel very immediate and relevant and important. So this effort of like direct funds going to artists is only going to happen if we participate in getting the books out there, as the artists, but also as like the community around it. So I think just really like honing in on like how we can help this effort, and also like reminding that like Tactile is very radical, and that this book has like, you know, basically been on a burn list. So we can forget that, you know, but I think it keeps it really, really important.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we help by getting people to buy it and spreading the word. right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Spreading the word, telling people about it. You know, it is, like I said, it's completely self-funded, self-published, and the model behind it with me paying artists with proceeds, unfortunately, it makes wholesaling really hard. It's not just, you know, this is a whole different animal. This is just me. I take whatever the cut is. It's an easy wholesale. This is difficult. You know, if I traditionally wholesale this at 50-50 with a bookstore, I'm losing money on it. So there are places that have worked with me, like the Bureau, who's been really generous in doing a 70-30 split. Which I will say too, that was a big thing with the original gallery was, I come from the world of being the artist on that side of that exchange. And 50-50 has always felt harsh to me as the artist. So at the original gallery, I was always doing 70-30 splits with original art. That was just something that I was like, this is something I can control. This is something that I can, in my business, I'm the boss. I get to set the rules. So that was always how I handled that. So yeah, I mean, but it is, it's all direct mail outs. It's very 90s record label style. I'm sitting there with the cards and the envelopes doing it myself. Because I have to, I know that's the only way that I can actually pay the artist. Otherwise, you know, I don't know how to do it. So yeah, spreading the word is huge, and supporting by buying the book. Yeah.
Any questions from the audience? Want to have any thoughts?
So how did you find a printer eventually?
The first book, I just reached out to different people until I found one that was cool with it, which is incredible. I mean, some of these places market themselves as like art printers.
Yeah.
And you're like this, I mean, it's not like there's like penetrative pornography in photographic form in these books, and you're freaking out about like nude drawings. Like I really have a hard time understanding like what museum have you not gone into in any country, any city in this country, and not gone into the old master's wing and seen tits and ass? Like I don't get it, but people have issues with it. I think it's because it's queer content.
Oh, yeah.
For sure. Yeah. So yeah, in LA, I found a printer in Hollywood that was able to do it. You know, this was a trial and error process too, because I was really adamant for the first book by doing this chrome cover, which was a very complicated process and a very expensive process, and there were several steps to get it right. I opted for the second book mainly based on the fragility of like the physical fragility of this book, and how much I had been moving and kind of losing books to the move, and like any dent is, you know, it was a thing. I was dealing with like handling glass basically with these books. I did opt to do a not metallic cover for this second round, also so that I could kind of keep the price a little bit lower on the second round, pay artists a little bit more if we sell out. Like there were just some numbers to crunch around the decisions made with this first book. But second book, you know, I reached out to a lot of my publisher friends, people that have books themselves, the Doable guys, Court Watson, Zane Curtis, who does sensitive content, just a bunch of different people that I knew in the scene, and asked who they use, and a lot of them came back with Mixum, which is an online print source that I guess has no problem doing adult content and queer content, and that's who I went with. You know, I think a lot of this stuff is trial and error. Like when you're self-publishing, you just have to like find the right person, and sometimes it doesn't work, or you move and you don't want to use the Hollywood printer anymore because it's so expensive to ship, so you got to find somebody else. I have maintained my relationship with my Austin printer who did these, and they still print these for me as well as my t-shirts, just because they're great and there's no reason not to. But with the Vision, I had to kind of figure that out all over again with Vision 2. Yeah.
Did you mentioned that you were going to be moving back to your original location in Hudson?
Yeah.
Is it larger, or you could be able to expand your programming, or?
Yeah, so the space itself, like the casserie space for the clothing boutique is slightly smaller. The back room is actually going to be a little bit bigger, which is great. So I'll be able to like expand a little bit I mean, it's still gonna be a small space, and it'll be highly curated, and it's not quite this grand. But we are gonna maintain our programming, we're gonna continue with the film nights. The space we have to work with in the new building for the events is smaller. Have you been to the film? Okay. It's a huge warehouse floor that we have couches and stuff in the round, and we have a big screen, and it's really a big raw blank canvas space. This is not gonna be that, it's a much smaller room, it'll be a more intimate experience. However, we've teamed up with Hudson Hall, which is the Opera House in Hudson, for bigger events. So like, for example, we are gonna be doing a short bus reunion at some point in the spring, where we're getting Howard Gertler, who is the producer of the film, who we connected with because he also produced How to Survive a Plague, which is one of the films that we showed. So Howard Gertler is kind of spearheading getting Vivian Bond, John Cameron Mitchell, Kurt and Bart, who were the costume designers for Short Bus, and himself all together for sort of a reunion of the film. So we're gonna be doing that at Hudson Hall. So like, for events that we know we need more than the small room for, we do have another outlet in town that can house us for that. But Queer House Film Club will maintain, and the Figure Drawing will maintain. Yeah. Yes.
I really appreciate the intergenerational quality you have in your curation of artists and the way that you have done like liner notes kind of in your books with you know, remembering being like a small queer and like learning about stuff from the tactile thing that you're holding. So putting that in context, where do you see your dynamics with that going as you move into like your vision 3 and then just your larger scale dreams as Dream Brother about intergenerational dialogue and residency and whatnot?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's really important to connect those dots between the elders and the new Instagram, you know, famous young artists. I think that there's validity to both. I'm personally drawn to the elders only in the sense that like that's how I came up. Like I didn't come up making my art in an Instagram era. That's the world we live in now, and it's challenging for a lot of people. But you know, the art that spoke to me as a youth was not available on Instagram. We had to find it through Tactile. We had to find it through word of mouth, through mail order catalogs, through a much more you know, it was more challenging, and it was more subversive, and it wasn't as in your face and accessible as it is now. So I like mixing that up in the books. I'm definitely leaning for Vision 3. I have a few elder artists that I'm really trying to get in the book. Stanley Stellar, Mel Odom, I'm reaching out to, Vivian Bond, I'm hoping to get. Elder, but you know. Oh, she's yeah, so I'm leaning a little bit harder into that for the third volume, but I also have younger artists as well. I think that it is important to have them both live together and speak to each other, because you know, we're all doing the same thing, we're just doing it on different timelines and under different circumstances. So yeah. Any other questions?
Thanks, Bureau.
Thanks so much
for
for
having
having
us. Thank you all for coming out on Super Bowl Sunday.
We can still make it.
Oh God, let's get out of here. Come on, y'all. And the book's available here, and like we said, spread the word. The algorithm is a piece of shit. So help everyone get their message out, and yeah, help support this wonderful book. Nathan will be around if you want to chew the cud with him. And yeah, thanks again, Bureau, for being such a wonderful place for us to all gather and hosting events like this. It's wonderful.
Thank you, Paul, for being here.
I'm very happy to be here. Thank you.
Guys, thanks everyone who joined us online.